I saw a kid fanning himself with my novel yesterday, and it it was frustrating. I was substitute teaching in a middle school yesterday, and it happened to be something they called Future Fest. It's essentially a career day, and like most school career days, it was adults explaining to the kids about potential occupations and jobs that they could hold in the future. For some reason, the speaker who was supposed to show up in the class that I was subbing for, they they never showed up. They just I don't know what happened, but and then to make things even more interesting, the person who was scheduled to talk to the class I was in was an airman from the base. He was Air Force airman. He came in uniform and everything. And so that was, perfect occasion for me to talk about my Air Force time. And he was enlisted, so I could talk about the officer side. Not that the kids were very interested in it. There were a few throughout the day, but yeah, for the most part. So I decided to do something I had never done before up to that point, which was publicly talk about being a novelist. Because I usually carry books with me, not for students. I don't typically talk about my writing with students, um, but just for like other adults that I run into, if they happen to ask or if it comes up, then I'll be like, hey, I'm a novelist. Here's my books, and I did do that, and I made a few connections that way yesterday with some adults. But yesterday was a test of this is me publicly in front of um, a group of students telling them that I'm a novelist and explaining about the life of a novelist and what type of career path what type of career path that you could have as a novelist. I'm laughing because at the same time, I was like, I'm working here at this middle school, so are you really a full-time novelist? I was waiting for some kid to roast me like that. Man, these middle schoolers could you gotta have thick skin around middle schoolers, man, because they will destroy you. They will they will take every little thing that is just askew on you, that looks a little bit off and weird, and they will just bring it up. They'll make fun of your voice. They'll make fun of your clothes. They'll laugh at your, you know, somebody was saying that I looked like their cousin Rashid or something. Some shit. They'll just whisper shit like this. It's all a projection of their own uh, budding insecurities about themselves. But most of it, you just let it bounce off. But it was interesting for two reasons. The first reason is nobody seemed to care. Um, and I don't know if it was just after lunch or whatever, but when I showed my books and I let them have them and handle them, which is always a risk around kids. You don't know because it's like, who knows what they're going to do with them. I passed them around and yeah, nobody had any questions. Nobody was the least bit curious. I mean, a novelist, somebody who, coming and saying they're a novelist. I mean, yeah, there were zero questions. There were none. And that was, and I met other people who were there. I met someone who was what'd she say? She's just like a sustainment coordinator for the garbage company. Like she's like a data scientist slash educator. You know, real estate people, and um, there was a woman who was a comedian. all these other people occupations that are fairly recognizable, I guess, if you know, but novelist, it was like, what the hell is that? And that leads to the second thing that was interesting about it, which is when I asked students, does any, who likes to read, um, in a class of about maybe 20 plus students. It wasn't that many students, but it was a decent sample size. Zero raised their hands. But there were none. And I get that because I'm trying to think if you had asked me when I was in middle school if I liked to read, I would have said yes. I would have said yes. I think in because in elementary school I was already, you know, plowing through the Hardy Boys and reading those and getting free time at the library. And yeah, I would just go after I finished my work, and then I would just grab little books. And I've been reading for a long time, and I'm enjoying. But I know the times are different. I know it's social media. That's was my first kind of reaction. Like, yeah, of course they don't read books as much on their own. Um, like voluntarily read books. They probably read stuff that they have to read. Well, they probably don't even read that, to be honest. Um, that they have to read, but it's just very sad that these are middle schoolers, so ages from like 11 to 14. And yeah, I walked away with I was exhausted yesterday. Yesterday was there were some discipline issues in the class that I was in. They just kept talking, and this had nothing to do with the novelist thing, but they kept talking in like little uh, pockets of activity. One group would start talking, the other one would start laughing. It was just like, and I was like, okay, I was over it. And so I called the vice principal in there, and she swooped in, and she she got that ass. I mean, they immediately locked up. And we didn't have a very fun time the rest of that time because they kind of fucked it up, and um, you know, they got several warnings, and they didn't heed the warning, so they get the consequences. But more important than that, back to the novelist thing, the lesson that I learned yesterday was that one, it was good. I didn't. It was another one of those things I didn't realize I was doing it until I was like in the moment of, yeah, I'm publicly for the first time telling a group of people, like giving a presentation, that I'm a novelist and I'm talking about it. And the second thing is that feeling when nobody cared or could relate to it at all or had any interest in it. Um, that it initially stung, just because you see all of these other familiar jobs and not so familiar jobs. It's kind of like corporate jobs or whatever. And yeah, they kind of showed respect to it and whatever. But for me, it was just like, well, I don't care about this shit, so I'm just gonna talk to my buddy, or I'm just gonna crumple this water bottle for some reason. Oh man, that was so annoying. But I was like, are you is that one of those it was like one of those moments like in the movies where it's like, this is occasion that would cause some people to quit this, to say this is too weird, this is too niche, nobody cares about reading. These kids certainly don't. Most adults don't either. um, what are you doing this for? Yeah, for yourself too, because you're good at it and you like it, you like words, you like stories, and you feel like that's the best vehicle to get your message out, and to just it feels like a purpose for you. It doesn't feel like just a title. But why this? And I started thinking about when you're on an unfamiliar path, when you're on a path that just feels just just isolated and lonely, that you feel like nobody can relate to your situation or what your goals are, who you are. When you feel like when you see that kid taking your novel, that thing that you spent years putting together and just flipping through it and fanning their face with it and treating it as if it's nothing, is that enough to make you want to quit? But I'd say even after that, let all of that, those kind of emotions wash over me after I went home, my feet burning from standing all day. I was like, you know what? Fuck that. This is the right path for me. And I think when you're on that unfamiliar path, the one that nobody recognizes, that's a sign that you're doing something that one, nobody else can do but you. Two, that it is something that not only people they can't relate to it now, but maybe in the future, no, definitely in the future, if you stick with it, then they will, because I bought up famous authors and that was a mistake in this setting because these kids don't read. So they don't even like I bought up like George R. R. Martin and J.K. Rowling. I mean, and I get it. They probably wouldn't even know those books those authors anyway because they don't. One, they don't read. Two, those are all. I could not think of a single contemporary like famous fiction author like because even J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter is 25 years old. It's 25, 26 years old. The first one. That's more of like a my generation thing. And even I found Harry Potter late. I didn't even discover the books until I was in college. So I felt like I was like, it wasn't even for me when I first found it. But I feel like when you're walking that path, it does feel like in that moment that nobody cares about it. But you have to ask yourself, is this who you are? Is this what I want to be? Is this what not only the type of work that I want to be doing, but what I want to be, known for? And the answer was it was an emphatic yes for me. I'm a novelist, and writing fiction is what I'm good at. I enjoy it. I'm good at other things too, but it's probably the thing. I just love words. I love sequencing them together in different ways, and I'm not going to stop because a group of kids decided they didn't give a shit about they weren't buying what I was selling. So if you find yourself in that moment in that moment of yeah, nobody gets this, like it's funny we tell this to kids all the time. I heard the message several times yesterday, like it's Future Fest, so you can be anything that you want, and yeah, we need those types of professions and all this stuff, and but I thought people say that stuff when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, they tell you to get a real fucking job. Um, you tell them you want to be some obscure thing like a trapeze artist or something, and they'll laugh at you. They'll they'll tell you that it doesn't pay. Your parents will get concerned. Your teachers will check your grades. And here I am standing here doing it, telling them that this is what I'm doing and this is who I am, showing you my books, and that's the reaction that I got. But I'm not going to let that change who I am or what I'm doing. The show will go on.